So, hi, Tessa. It's really great to chat to you today. I'd like to introduce you to our audience. So you're Tessa Shepperson from Landlord Law. We've been sort of working together now for, I don't know, a year or two, something like that. And we've got some links on our website, and I think you've got some on yours too, with Alphaletz, which is great. But obviously, law and the legal side is a really important part of what landlords really need to be thinking about. Probably now more important than ever because of all the changes in the last few years. So could you tell us a little bit about what you guys do and what landlord law is all about?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm a solicitor. I qualified a very long time ago. And I've been specialising in residential landlord and tenant law for most of that time. So I have been around quite a long time, and I've read a lot of law books, looked at a lot of legal statutes. In 2001, at the dawn of the internet age, I put a website online for landlords, which was mainly so they could instruct me online. And I had a Q&A page. And I realised that landlords and also tenants often didn't really understand what their legal rights and obligations were. So I set up Landlord Law originally to be a subscription service so I could afford to spend the time on it, answering questions, and it would be somewhere authoritative that landlords could go to find out answers and to understand what their obligations are.
Yeah.
And in the period of time since that, which is now over 20 years, the site has grown. There's a huge amount of information there. We've got an eviction guide. People can ask me questions in the forum. We've got tenancy agreements. We've got all sorts of other stuff. So it's actually a really good resource. And I know that many of our members, some of them have been with us for 10, 15, some of them even 20 years. And we've supported them through their life being a landlord. And, you know, they've sort of depended on us to bring them up to date and sort of help them through. And it's nice because there's a lot of loyalty there.
Yeah,
you know, because some of them have been with me for many, many years.
That's brilliant. And I know a really hot subject at the moment is rent arrears, because
it's always a hot topic.
Yeah, it's always a hot topic, and it's something we put right on the front page of our app because it's tracking rents and keeping on top of rents, and everyone's busy, and especially people who are landlords and have a full-time job. Before you know it, you've lost sight of what's come in, and then you're on the back foot. So any advice or any tidbits or snippets that we should be telling our landlords about?
Well, I mean, initial advice for landlords about dealing with rent arrears sort of starts right at the beginning. And you mentioned that landlords haven't got a lot of time and, they're very busy. But when you are renting a property to tenants, you shouldn't really rush it. You need to be very careful to check them out properly. Bear in mind that your property is if you've got one, it's probably the most expensive thing that you own. If you've got a property portfolio, it could be worth millions. And, you are having somebody off the street who you don't really know properly to go into this property and have full control over it. You need to be really careful who you put in there. So you need to do proper checks. You need to see their bank statements. You need to get references. You need to get a credit reference report. And I think you also ought to check them out on the internet. Just put their name in Google and see what comes up.
Yeah.
Put their name in Facebook, and just see. Because
we track that actually in the app on the tenant record. A lot of people are saying, why you put all this stuff in? But we put in like the Facebook link, LinkedIn, all that stuff. You don't have to put it in, but it's useful to have it. And, I agree with you. I think the more information you know about your tenants, the better,
the better it is. I mean, of course, one thing is you have to be careful with sort of data protection. Obviously, you can only look at their internet information if it's freely available. I'm not suggesting you hack into their account at Facebook. And you also need to be sure that the Fred Jones that you're thinking of renting your property for is the same Fred Jones who owns 3 Alsatians and, has got a couple of criminal convictions. It needs to be, you need to make sure that you're looking at the right person. Checking them out is really key. Another reason why you need to do that is that all landlords should have proper landlord insurance. And increasingly, in fact, it may be universally, insurance companies are requiring that landlords check tenants out properly before they rent them.
And what sort of insurance are you referring to? Are you talking about like rent guarantee insurance or
all of it?
Buildings insurance? Okay, all of it.
All of it. Yeah. I mean, for rent, they want someone who can pay. For buildings insurance, they want someone who's not going to trash it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you need to have proper landlord's insurance, and you need to check your tenants out properly. Another thing that you need to do for the insurance, and it's also relevant for your whole sort of letting, is you need to do proper inspections. Now, a lot of landlords don't like doing inspections because they feel they're intruding on their tenants, on their privacy. Tenants often don't like it very much because they don't want some bloke coming in or some woman coming in and poking through all their things. But actually, it is really, really important that landlords do that. And my recommendation, and a lot of landlords don't agree with this, my recommendation is that you at least go around there and do a visual inspection every 3 months, and do an internal inspection every 6 months, because you need to check. First of all, you need to check that they haven't moved unauthorized people in there, that turning it into an HMO. You know, you need to make sure that there's no criminal activity going on. You need to make sure that there's no damage to the property that needs to be repaired quickly before it becomes more expensive. And it gives you an opportunity to talk to your tenants, which allows you to pick up on things which may affect their paying the rent. So if they're about to lose their job, you know, they will hopefully tell you, or you can just sort of talk to them about things and just sort of see what's going on.
That's a very good point, isn't it? And being a proactive landlord basically is what we're talking about. And I think you put a kit together as well. Yeah, we've got
a couple of kits actually. I did a kit a few years ago. It's the most popular kit I've ever done, and it's called the Property Inspection Kit. And it tells you what to do. And, you know, we've got forms, you know, the procedure that you have to do and sort of checklists that you have. So if you're sort of armed with the kit, you don't feel quite so intrusive when you go into someone's home, because it like sort of gives you an authority because you've got the checklists and you know, it sort of tells you what to do. And there's a huge amount of information there, because I did it first as a beta kit. And then the people I sold it to gave me the most fantastic feedback on inspections and the problems that they've had. So I've put a lot of that in the kit.
That's great.
So it's
we'll put a link on the site for everyone as well, so they can get access to that if they want it. That's good.
Let me tell you about the other kit that I did, which is a bit more expensive, but that's the kit that helps you if tenants won't let you in, because that is a problem that people have. And sometimes it's because they can't afford the rent, you know, and they're just blocking everything out and putting their head in the stands, which is what people do sometimes. So, so sort of recap on the sort of first part of dealing with rent arrears. You need to check your tenants out properly. You need to make sure that they're suitable tenants, they're able to pay for it, you know. Ideally that they're linked up with Alphaletz, so that you know they know.
Well, it's really important. I mean, you know, one of the things we do in the system is we track all the notes as well. So, for instance, the way I use it, every time I have a conversation with a tenant, I'll put the note in there, and it can be a text or a phone call. I'll write it all up, and I've got the whole history. And in fact, I had to go to court recently myself with a tenant problem. And it's the first time I've ever been to a small claim. I'm glad to say we won it. But I had all my information right at my fingertips. And at one point, I had my laptop. I could open up the laptop and I had all the documentation. And I'm convinced it helped me win it, because the tenant was fumbling around and couldn't remember stuff. And I had it all, you know, right there.
Yeah, no, that's really important. And so far as rent arrears are concerned, one of the things that is absolutely vital is you get onto it quickly. The best time to contact a tenant about not paying their rent is the day after they haven't paid it, because that is the time they're most likely to be able to pay it, or you'll be able to reach some sort of agreement with them.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. We do track all that. I mean, that's when the rent should be coming in. The day it goes into arrears, it shows up straight away on the dashboard for that very reason. Yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
As I was saying, so when you found out that the tenant hasn't paid the rent, then you need to get in touch with them and find out why. And that's the time to do a deal with them, possibly move the rent, so tell them they can pay rent on another day, i.e. after their salary goes into their bank account. Perhaps help them out a bit. That's the time to help them, really.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what about tenants who have gone into arrears and have been in arrears for a few months? What do you do as a landlord?
I mean, you try to help them in the same way that you would if you'd learned about it at the start, but with more difficulty because there's more money involved.
Yeah.
One of the things that landlords could do, and I have to say I wasn't aware of this until I attended a course by a lady called Julie Ford, is that you can. There are a large number of charities and grant organisations that do have grant money available to help people who are in arrears of rent, particularly if there is something, if they've got a particular characteristic, like if they've got children, there's charities that will help, or if someone is disabled, or perhaps if you're a particular nationality, or if you've got a certain type of job, because there are various organisations which cater for helping people in specific categories.
Yeah, that's really good.
There are places where you can look them up. There's a brilliant website called Turn to Us, which has got this information. Turn to Us can also help people check that tenants are receiving the right benefit as well. And that's another thing that you need to check. Because often, I mean, benefits are a blooming nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah.
And often, if it's checked over by somebody who knows what they're doing, they find that they're not actually receiving their full benefit entitlement. And sometimes the back payments from that will help pay off some of the arrears. Yeah. So it's really worth a landlord's while to help tenants do that, because it's just helping you.
Yeah.
Get
it's
your
in everyone's interest. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
a lot of these organisations, unlike Universal Credit, a lot of these organisations, when they're making a payment that is specifically in respect of rent arrears, they will pay it to the landlord rather than the tenant, because that's its purpose.
Yeah, that's good to
know.
So
we have I developed a little kit with Julie Ford called I've forgotten it now. It's helping tenants in arrears, something like that. Where we go through the whole procedure and we look at the different types of grant aid available and what you can do and the various resources. So that's available on Landlord Law as well.
That's great. That's great. So so how do people get in contact with you? Is it just online or?
The best way is the website www.landlordlaw.co.uk. Being an early adopter of the internet, I managed to get the domain name Landlord Law, which is a great domain name. I only have the .co.uk. I haven't got the .com. That's owned by an American attorney.
Right.
But you can find all about Landlord Law there, and there is a link on that page to the Landlord Law shop, which is where you can find all the kits and the courses.
Great. And I think you said you would offer a code to some of our users as well
for some of the kits. Yeah,
that's great.
I'll look into that. And,
thank you.
I'll get something over to you. But yeah, definitely.
Okay. We'll put that on the video as well, so people can, if they want to access that, they can do it from your site. And also you wrote some great blogs for us, which we've turned into an ebook. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
If anyone goes to our website, they'll get a little pop-up and they can download the ebook. It's completely free, but it's really some really good background information for anyone, whether you're an experienced landlord or a newbie. The rules have changed a lot, so it's always good to keep updated. And I know you've got some events coming up as well.
We do a number of events for landlords throughout the year. And,
that's great.
I'll keep you informed. If anybody wants to find out about our events directly from us, we do have a mailing list. We have a bulletin that goes out every Tuesday, and there is a link on the homepage of Landlord Law both in the sort of main body, but if you can't find it, scroll right down to the footer and there's a link there.
Fabulous. So the other question, Tessa, we get is what happens if you have to evict the tenants yourself and you got to a point where there's no way back and you need some help. What happens then?
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, there are situations where evicting the tenant is the only option. It's best to avoid it if you can. I mean, for example, there are various mediation services that you can use. And landlords tend to have a bit of a negative view on mediation. But even if your tenant doesn't engage, that can still help you because they'll give you a certificate saying that you tried to mediate and they didn't engage. And that's going to really help you with your eviction claim because it'll put the judge on your side. So it is worth doing that. But if you are going to evict a tenant, you need to be really careful because if you get it right, it seems really easy. You do all the notice and you go through and you think, blimey, that was easy. What are people making a fuss about? But if you get one tiny thing wrong, it sort of hoiks the whole thing off and it can take you months to get it back on track. So you do have to be really careful. You need to be careful to serve the correct notices. There's basically two notices. There's a Section 8 notice, which you use for rent arrears, and there's a Section 21, which you sort of use for everything else. But in particular, the Section 21, it's hedged around with a lot of prerequisites. And if you haven't dealt with things properly first, your Section 21 notice won't be valid. And an awful lot of landlords serve invalid Section 21 notices. I mean, I've got a friend who does a lot of work for tenants. And he said practically every Section 21 notice he sees is invalid.
Right.
Now, landlord law can help you with this. Okay. If you go to the landlord law site and scroll down to the bottom, there is a witch possession proceedings guide, which is free, which you can use, which will sort of steer you to the right procedure to follow. And we do have the notices and guidance on. In fact, we've got a complete eviction guide that you can use. Or we can point you in the right direction for using solicitors.
I do think those are the sort of things that people underestimate or don't think about until, of course, it's too late. So they think they've got the right protection and then they find out afterwards they haven't. And that's really what you're all about, isn't it? That's why you set up and, that's why you offer the service you do. And getting professional advice is always the best advice.
But I mean, with possession proceedings, it's really what you've done in the past. If you've done everything correctly, your possession proceedings will probably go through fairly smoothly. But if you haven't, if you haven't protected your deposit, if you've taken illegal tenant fees, things like that, if that's happened, then you're going to have problems. If you haven't done the repair work, they may be able to, certainly if you bring a claim based on rent arrears, they can derail that if there's outstanding repair work.
Interesting.
So you need to deal with it properly. And then if you do that, then if you do have to evict, and hopefully you won't, because most tenants are fine. It's only a few that are problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always been my experience, that most tenants are great people and they want to work with you. And and obviously it's important as a landlord to look after your tenants as well, just like you've mentioned. And then normally it's a great relationship, despite what you might read in the press. And
well, they got to sell papers, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly.
But I have to say, I think they do tend to misrepresent it a lot. And
they do. And I think there's never been a better time to be a landlord in a lot of ways, because there's more tenant demand than there's ever been. House prices are going up and up, so it's a good investment as well from an investment point of view. But it's a very, very needed service because the government can't provide enough housing, so the private rented sector needs to step in.
Way to go. And you get much more return for your cash than you would if you'd invested it in Big Widgets Limited.
Yes, as long as you do it right. I mean,
as long as you do it right.
As long as you do it right. And we're all about being professional landlords, because that's what it's all. Thinking of it like a business. We've done talks with other people like Paul Champlin that we talked about earlier, and that's his theme as well. And part of that is having a system. That's where Alphaletz comes in, and we provide that system and structure. But then there's all the other bits, just like as if you're running any other business, you've got to have the right legal entity and the right professional advice to run a good business. So,
I mean, one of the features that we have on Landlord Law is we have 5 checklists which go through the different stages of running a property. In fact, the articles I wrote for your ebook were based on that. And you can go through and tick each one off and go through them. And if you go through them all in detail, you should be okay.
That's great. That's great. Well, fantastic. So anyone can get your site through our site. We've got you down. We've got you as a featured partner on our front page. So if anyone's watching this and trying to get hold of Tessa, that's one way to do it. Or just go directly to your site at Landlord Law. And I think people will find that it's very helpful and an invaluable service that you offer. So thank you. Thanks again for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tessa.